Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật.
Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. I am Master THôNG LAI, and I would like to send my warmest regards to all the compatriots overseas and in the country. Today is Tuesday, June the 2nd, 2020. It is 11:08 a.m. California time, which is also Washington State time. After performing the memorial ceremony for the spirit of a Buddhist follower, I took a short break, and I want to continue the preaching of the Diamond Sutra as I had promised. In this Dharma talk, I will read some emails from different listeners. After listening to 3 of my Dharma talks about the Diamond Sutra, they called and emailed me to ask some questions. Please listen to these emails asking about the Diamond Sutra. As I am getting ready to preach the section of the Buddha taught Varmo Dubode how to give alms to receive unlimited blessing. Most of the emails are from young listeners whom have the same questions after they had listened to my Dharma talk in English. They said the Buddha taught the Bodhisattva to give alms without clinging to sounds and visuals. Then the merit would be limitless. These young listeners read the Diamond Sutra ahead of my preaching because they know I would preach this topic. In their opinions, when we hear or see a person whom is suffering, for example, the social media network posted pictures of a person who is suffering, or a picture of a disabled Republic of Vietnam veteran, we would then go to the provided address to give donation money. Because of relying to the visual or the form, therefore, we could give alms. Once we gave alms to these poor people, we also would give them words of comfort. This is, we use the sounds to give them verbal solace so that they could feel better. We also use the form, which is money, rice, and clothes, to give alms. However, the Buddha taught not to use sounds and visuals to give alms in order to receive limitless blessing. This is a very good question. The Kuan Yin Bodhisattva listens to save the suffering beings. Kuan Yin has borderless hearing. In section 25 of the Lotus Sutra said this, said the Kuan Yin is always listening to anyone who calls her name for help. Even a bodhisattva like Kuan Yin still depends on the sound to save the sentient beings. For example, in the old days when I escaped Vietnam by boat, the boat was sinking and we all recited Namo Quan Deam Bodha. The Christians on the boat called to the Virgin Mother Maria to save them. Whether it's Mother Maria or Kuan Yin, they wanted to help the sentient beings live and their miseries taken away. They have to realize the boat was sinking or hear the call of help from us. After that, they could save our boat from sinking and we will reach the shore to freedom safely. The Bodhisattva help the sentient beings without asking for anything in return. The next passage of the Diamond Sutra is very hard to understand. Let me read this section first, then I will answer the questions from the young listeners whom have emailed me their questions after listening to the preaching of the Diamond Sutra in English. Normally, old Vietnamese Buddhist followers don't dare to ask their masters if they have questions. However, I am happy to see the second generation whom grew up in the United States and could not speak Vietnamese have questions about the advanced Diamond Sutra. They told me that they researched on Google for the translated Diamond Sutras from different authors. They noticed that I will preach the section of the Buddha taught Varmo Dubode, that Bodhisattva who wants limitless merits from giving alms should not dwell to visual, sound, scent, taste, tactile feelings, and Dharma. That is, the eyes don't have to see, the ears don't have to hear. Giving alms because of the call for help is not acceptable. This sound is very confusing. Let me read to you the section from the Diamond Sutra. Moreover, Du Bodhi, when a bodhisattva practices generosity, he does not rely on any object, any form, any sound, smell, taste, tactile objects, or Dharma to practice generosity. That Dubode is the spirit in which a bodhisattva practices generosity, not relying on signs. Why? If a bodhisattva practices generosity without relying on signs, their happiness that results cannot be conceived or measured. Dubode, do you think that the space in the eastern quarter can be measured? No, honored one, Venerable Dubode answered. Dubode, can space in the western, southern, or northern quarters above or below be measured? No, world, honored one, Venerable responded. Dubode, if a bodhisattva does not rely on any concept while practicing generosity, the happiness that results from that virtuous act is as great as space. It cannot be measured. Dubode, the Bodhisattva should let their minds dwell in the teaching I have just given. These young people read this section and they got curious. In the old days when I studied Dharma in the Buddhist university, all the professors taught at the university before 1975 had explained that if we give alms to someone, let's say $1, but we do not think about that money anymore, then the merit is much more. Giving alms and no longer thinking about it, not to use the visuals to give alms, meant like this. If we walk on the street and we saw 2 poor girls, we give more money to the better looking girl than the ugly girl. My professor gave an example like this. As we were on our way home after schooling at the Vajra University, we saw 2 females. The first girl was wearing torn clothes without any shoes or sandals, and she also is handicapped. She was begging for money from us. We would give her some money, but very little. As we walked a little further, there was another girl. This girl is from Gailang High School. She wore the white traditional long dress of Vietnam. For whatever reason, she held the sign begging for money to spend on something. We would give her more money than the handicapped girl. That was how my professor at the Buddha University taught us. If we give more alms or less alms without considering the form of ugly and beauty, then the merit would be limitless. Then we heard someone telephoning to ask for money. If that person who spoke to us spoke with a special, soft, gentle, sweet, and polite voice, we would give them more money than the person who speaks with us in an unpleasant voice. That is giving alms relying on tactile or feeling between male and female. We should practice generosity without relying on any object, any form, sound, smell, taste, tactile object, or dharma. Let me talk to you about taste. For example, you were an owner of a large villa and you have many helpers. Some of the helpers serve in the kitchen, some of them do landscaping, and some do housekeeping. There was a chef who cooked many great dishes for you in the past. And an unfortunate event happened and he became very poor and asked you for some help. You remember that he used to cook for you and served for your taste, so you will help him more than the helpers who didn't know how to cook, such as the gardener or the housekeepers. Some Venerable in Vajra University taught me not to rely on taste and tactile. That is the contract between male and female. For example, in all the female students of the same class, there is one who has elegant hands. If you ever hold her hands, you will feel so relaxed and comfortable. For whatever reason, she needed help on her financing. And all the male students would give her more money than a female student who has very rough hands. And they feel like wooden sticks. That was what I learned from the Venerable in Van Han University. So do not practice generosity based on tactile. As you know, the eyes is what we use for vision. The ear is for sound. And the nose is for smell or fragrance. A person who wears perfume that matches your personal choice, you will like that person more and would give alms to that person. Lastly is the Dharma. What does it mean by relying on Dharma? What does Dharma have anything to do with practicing generosity? Dharma is the thought. When you give something to a person with a thought that you will get something back in the future, that is you're hoping to gain something, which is also implying there was a thought when giving alms. That was what I learned in the Buddhist Junior College. As time went by and I attended Buddhist graduate university, the Venerable taught differently based on my level of understanding. They taught giving alms was like detaching or shredding away. All the suffering in this world exists because we are attached. But how are we attached? We humans have two parts, one of which is the spirit of the mind, and the other part is the physical body. All the people who have unhappy marriages because their husband drinks, gambles, or has an affair, why are you suffering? Because of your eyes. In the past, he dressed appropriately to please your eyes. Therefore, you agreed to marry him. His words were so sweet in the past, and when he had not married to you, he spoke sweetly to you. His gallant and sweet words stuck in your ears. He used perfume to please your nose. And then you went out with him, and the physical touch he gave you was very emotional and an unforgettable feeling. Because of the contact between men and women, you got married. Therefore, you are now miserable. Relying on Dharma gave you the thoughts of this and that when you married him. Think about it. When you buy a house, a car, or invest in a business, or marry your fiancé that now causes you to suffer, it is because you dwell on the form of sound, smell, taste, tactile object, or Dharma. All the Buddhist monks and nuns are miserable because they rely on form, sound, smell, taste, tactile objects, or Dharma. Building a temple has to meet many criteria and cannot be small. Buying the bell or Buddha statues are also have to be this and that. Isn't it true that laymen or monks are also miserable? We all gave so much alms, but why haven't given alms that did not rely on form, sound, smell, taste, tactile objects, or Dharma? We practice generosity to gain fame, to be rich, and to be beautiful. In another word, we ditch the small things to gain the bigger things. As you all know, if we preach Dharma exactly the same way the sutra is printed, we insult 3 generations of the Buddha. Because the Buddha preached Dharma according to the level of the listeners. As you can see in some sutra, the Buddha said giving alms or practicing generosity would receive blessing and reborn in heaven. He praised people who offered flowers in this life and will be born with beauty in the next life. Offering food to the Sangha will be wealthy in the next life. Giving away medicine will be blessed with health. Releasing trapped animals will be blessed with longer life. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, he saw everyone has Buddha's nature, but no one would listen to his philosophy at that time. When I first started to preach Dharma, if preaching like this, no one would listen to me. I had to preach from the simple sutra first. Then I would gradually move up to a higher sutra. That was the reason the Buddha said that he had not preached anything during the 49 years. At the beginning, he preached to give alms and hold precepts. Let me tell you a story how the Buddha helped the son of a wealthy merchant, Kapgodak. The wealthy merchant offered the Buddha and his Sangha the garden of Kivian by paying the amount of gold that covered the entire garden's ground for the Prince Jeta. This garden was used for the summer monkhood retreat every year. In this garden, the Buddha also preached his Dharma to the Sangha during the 3 months in the summer. The wealthy merchant already attained the first level of arhat, and he spent a lot of gold to purchase the garden. His son, Dandi Sala, hated the Buddha because his father wasted so much gold. Dandi Sala was a high-rank mandarin in the Sarvasati city. Merchant Kapgodak bowed to the Buddha and begged him to have some compassion to save his only son. The Buddha told the merchant to use whatever his son liked to enhance his son. Sir Kapgodak said that his son liked money more than anything else. The Buddha told him to hire his son to attend an 8-precept cultivation. Don't you think that it is humorous to see hiring someone to cultivate? The first time Danny Sala got hired was for attending a one-day holding of the 8 precepts. What are the 8 precepts? That is, staying inside the Kivian garden for 24 hours, not sleeping on the luxurious bed, eating only one meal at lunch, not wearing makeup, nor singing and dancing, no killing, no stealing, no adultery, no consuming intoxic substances, and no lying for one whole day and night. His son is a high-ranking officer, so his income was 1,000 tassels of gold a year. The merchant Kapgodak listened to the Buddha, so one morning he asked his son to find him a servant in the villa who had spared time to help him. His son got curious and asked why he needed a servant. In the villa, there were thousands of servants to choose from. The merchant said he needed someone to cultivate with the Buddha for one day on behalf of the merchant because he was too busy to go on. Dandy Sala wanted to know if any servant can go or not. The merchant said that he needed someone that was really dedicated to hold the 8 precepts so that he could receive the blessing. During the cultivating time with the Buddha, this person was not allowed to eat multiple meals, but can have only one meal at lunch. This person was not allowed to wear jewelry and makeup. This person was not allowed to leave the premise and could not sleep on a big bed. This person had to send the merits of holding the 8 precepts to the merchant, and he would pay him 1,000 tassels of gold for that. Now, as soon as Dandy Sala heard 1,000 tassels, he was dumbfounded because he served the king for the entire year to receive 1,000 tassels of gold, and the servant would make that same amount in one day. He asked his father if he could do that or not. The merchant was worried that his son, being a high-ranked Mandarin, could live in this harsh condition, like sleeping without a bed, eating only once a day, and the 8 precepts would not be fulfilled. Dandy Sala was a smart person. He said he would stuff himself before he entered the Kivian garden to stay for the entire day. He would hold the 8 precepts by removing his jewelry and his makeup. He would not think about sexuality, sleeping on the big bed, killing, stealing, lying, or singing. He wanted to know if his father would pay him 1,000 tassels of gold if he did. The merchant said definitely, as long as his son did not cheat on him. So the Danny removed his jewelry, ate a big meal, changed to simple clothes, and headed to the Kivian garden to receive the 8 precepts. He then headed to the shade of a tree and slept. He did not violate any precepts, but he did not listen to the Dharma talk In the evening, he drank water instead of eating dinner. He slept until the next day and attended the ending ceremony with the Buddha and headed home. The merchant assigned his servant to follow his son during that time and knew his son did not break any precepts, but also did not listen to any dharma. So the next week, the merchant asked his son to go again, but this time he wanted his son to tell him what the Buddha taught. He said, holding the 8 precepts was good, but the merit of listening to the Dharma to see the true mind would bring unspeakable blessing. The merchant said only opening up the mind would bring more merit for him. The dandy said the Buddha talked too much for him to remember. The mayor said that he only needed to hear a verse of 4 sentences and he would give his son another 1,000 tassels of gold. Dandy Sala once again headed back to the Kivian garden. Only this time he listened and memorized a verse of 4 sentences. His specialty was literature, so it was not hard for him to remember the verse. He then headed to the shade of the tree to sleep. The Buddha knew this person attended the event because of money, so he used his magical powers to remove the verse from the memories of Dandy Sala. The dandy realized that he had forgotten the verse, so he ran back to listen and memorize a different verse. He then took his nap, and once again the Buddha used his power to remove the verse from his mind. Dandy Sala was so frustrated and vowed to listen with the highest concentration. As you know, the scripture said, if anyone who listens to the Dharma with the highest concentration and is not affected by all the surrounding events will attain some level of arhat. Dandy Sala, after listening to the Buddha with his highest dedication, he attained the first level of arhat, which was Saraptapana. At the end of the preaching, he vowed to the Buddha and asked the Buddha to accept his offering for lunch on the next day. According to Buddha's rule, anyone who attended the 8 precepts event and wanted to offer the Buddha and his Shangha would receive Buddha's bowl. The Buddha gave the dandy his bowl and told Venerable Ananda that he would not accept other offerings from anyone because he had already accepted the offer from dandy. At 11 a.m., after the Dharma talk and the ending ceremony was over, the Buddha followed dandy back to his villa. The merchant Kap Godak saw his son come back with the Buddha. He knew his son already understood the Dharma. He opened the gate and handed his son a bag of 1,000 tassels of gold to pay for 1 day of cultivation according to their agreement. Surprisingly, his son declined the money from his father. The merchant bowed to the Buddha and exclaimed, this was the first time his son declined money. The Buddha smiled and said that the happiness of being the king in the world or even in heaven was not comparable to the happiness of obtaining the first level of arhat. His son, Dandi Sala, because of listening to the Dharma with the highest concentration, had obtained the Sapatana level, which is the first level of arhat. People who obtain this level would not be distracted by money anymore. Therefore, all the Buddhist followers who are listening to my preaching want to know if they had obtained the first level of arhat or not. If you see 1,000 tassels of gold and still not pay attention to it, then you have. However, if you see 1,000 tassels of gold and think about it, then you have not obtained any level. As you can see, the Buddha used different methods to help sentient beings. Venerable Ananda met Lady Marangya, who used the black magic to convince him to break the Buddhist monk precepts. The Buddha used his magical powers, Shaurangama Sutra, to stop Venerable Ananda and asked Bodhisattva Vang to bring the both of them back to see the Buddha. The Buddha told the Lady Marangya that Ananda is a Buddhist monk who already obtained the first level of arhat. If she wanted to marry him, she then had to become a Buddhist nun and at least attain the first level of arhat. Only when she has done these things, the Buddha would let her marry Venerable Ananda. The Buddhists use many skillful methods to help sentient beings attain enlightenment. Once they immerse themselves with Dharma, they would detach themselves from the 5 common lusts in the world. The Buddhist Dharma has many different levels to help the mundane to become the Bodhisattva. The Buddha used wealth, beauty, fame, and gain to help people who were at entry level. Once they understood Dharma, they would use the wisdom to root these delusional materials. That was the meaning of this section in the Diamond Sutra. Bodhisattva gave alms without any form, sound, smell, taste, tactile objects, or Dharma. Then the merit are unspeakable. If you see a person who has a difficult time and you want to help them, then you still rely on the forms. Your form is wealthy and their form is poor. Therefore, you have to let the 4 forms go. If you can let $1,000 go, then you can let $10,000 go. And eventually, $500,000. But you still cling to the praise and insults. Therefore, you still do not have the unspeakable merit. That is, if you are giving away the money and the Dharma to someone, you then have to give away the 6 senses, which are eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and the mind. I want you not to dwell to the delicious taste of food, the great smell of fragrance, the compliment of praising, the tactile feeling of the opposite sex. That doesn't mean that you want to poke out your eyes to be blind, poke your ears to be deaf, cut your tongue out to be numb, paralyze your body so you can't move. That is not what I mean. You need your 6 senses to do Buddhist work, to perform the Bodhisattva vows, to repay your parents, to fulfill the duty of a husband or wife, to fulfill your duty to the country. You need your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. But once you have done it, you should give them all away and not dwell on them anymore. Only then you will free from the suffering. Giving so much alms and still not free from the suffering because we still dwell on the form, sound, smell, taste, tactile object, or Dharma. The essence of the Diamond Sutra is letting the mind detach from time and space, which is also Buddha's mind. As we see 6 things lay on the table, and we want to dwell on them, from beauty, sound, taste, smell, then we will be stuck. Dharma cannot be effective from hindrance. Also, you can see if our cultivating Dharma process still depends on beauty, sound, smell, and taste, then it will be limited. Therefore, the Buddha asked to give them all away. That is when we walk by a beautiful girl or a handsome man. We should not let the beauty images be kept in our minds, but we should let the beauty images in our mind go away. When you hear praise, let it go off your mind. When you hear a singer perform a song, let the music go off your mind. After you eat at a great restaurant, the next time you walk by, and your tongue reminds you to eat there again, let the taste go. As you have a feeling for a soft-spoken girl, and you keep remembering that feeling, and you're getting ready to marry her, now that you listen to this Dharma talk, you can give away that feeling. In the end, you will give away the awareness and the delusional imagination. Give them all away, and you will have the unspeakable merit. People who do good deeds and want to be on the news for praising, they still dwell on the 4 forms. If they can detach from beauty, sound, smell, taste, feeling, and Dharma, then they are truly free. That is called Parjana, giving alms. Parjana wisdom is the wisdom of the other side, which is free from the 6 paths of death and birth. The person who understands this sutra won't poke his eyes to be blind and poke his ears to be deaf, but not to retain the beauty, the praise, the sound of music, nor the great taste of food. The reason we are suffering is because we cannot control the beauty, sound, smell, taste, and tactile feeling in Dharma. I've been answering the questions from a Buddhist follower. When I was in Buddhist junior college, my teacher taught me that giving alms, we should not think about it. That was an entry level of Dharma. As you use money or rice to help the poor, that is relying on the form. Once you have done Buddhist work, we should no longer dwell on that. We don't run after the sixth sense so we can be free from suffering. It is possible to give away money, car, house, and even wife and children, but it is very difficult to give away without dwell on the six senses. As soon as Buddha's work is done, the duty as a son in the family is fulfilled, and a citizen in the country is fulfilled. We should not let the six senses of organs come in contact with the six recall senses. We then can live in this world but still enjoy peace and happiness as in our head. To really understand the Mahana Sutra, we need to understand it thoroughly like that. If not relying on the forms to give alms, we could see someone really needing our help. If we use a few sentences to help someone feel better when they are complaining about the family, or I give a Dharma talk that is relying on the sound to help then open up their wisdom, they don't feel miserable anymore. The merit of giving alms with relying on the sound and forms are limited. We should practice to give alms as the Bodhisattva. When the Buddha's work is done, we drop the six senses and the six recall senses. When we do, we start to rely on the six senses when giving alms again. When we return as the Bodhisattva, like Guan Yin, she has borderless hearing. She heard the call for help in the Eastern Sea and she would help immediately. After helping the sinking ship to safety, she did not attach to the sound of praising her. She gave that away as well. That is the ultimate alms of giving, and it has limitless merit. While other alms given in this world still belongs to the six realms of form and formlessness and are affected by beauty, sound, smell, taste, tactile, and Dharma. These alms given still rely on wealth, beauty, fame, indulgence, and resting, and have not escaped the cycle of birth and death. You should pay attention to this important point.
Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích